The first human to set foot on Revon Prime was Captain Han Do-yu. The shuttle landed in what had once been a city square. The ground was cracked and covered in ash. Buildings stood in ruins on every side, their walls scorched and broken. Smoke drifted through the streets like ghosts. The air smelled of fire and dust and something deeper, something that spoke of suffering that would take generations to heal. Do-yu stepped off the ramp and looked around. Behind him came Commander Yoon Nari, Lieutenant Bae Ji-nu, and 200 crew members from the fleet, medics, engineers, and security teams carrying supplies and equipment. More shuttles were landing across the planet. Every ship in the fleet had sent people down. The streets were empty at first. The Omari had been hiding underground, and in the ruins of their buildings for days, terrified of the Droke. They did not know who these new arrivals were. They did not know if they were safe. Do-yu ordered his people to set up medical stations and supply points. He told them to move slowly, keep their weapons down, and be gentle. These people had been through something terrible. The last thing they needed was to be frightened by another group of strangers with guns. Unji worked with the communication team to broadcast a message in the Omari language. It had taken her hours to build a rough translation using the fragments from the original distress call and the alien language databases aboard the Iron Wake. The message was simple. We are from Earth. We heard your call. The enemy is gone. We are here to help. The message played on every frequency, repeated again and again, echoing from the speakers of human shuttles and portable transmitters placed across the city. For a long time, nothing happened. Then slowly, they began to appear. The Omari were tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that reflected light like deep water. They moved carefully, emerging from doorways and tunnels and holes in the ground. Many were injured. Some carried children. Some could barely walk. They looked at the humans with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and something that Do-yu could not quite name at first. Then he understood. It was hope. Fragile, terrified hope that had been buried under 3 days of horror and was only now daring to show itself. The elder named Tivan was among the first to approach. He walked slowly, supported by the young teacher Rivi. His body was thin, and his clothes were torn and dirty. But his eyes were sharp and clear. He walked straight toward Do-yu and stopped a few steps away. The two looked at each other. Two species who had never met, standing in the ashes of a world that had almost been lost. Tivan spoke. His voice was rough and broken. The translator on Do-yu's wrist struggled for a moment, and then produced the words in a flat, mechanical tone. Who are you? Do-yu took a breath. He thought about all the things he could say. He thought about diplomacy and politics and the careful language of first contact that he had been trained to use. Then he threw all of it away. My name is Han Do-yu. I am the captain of the Earthship Iron Wake. We received your distress call. We came as fast as we could. I am sorry we were not faster. Tivan stared at him. His large eyes glistened. Behind him, more Omari gathered, listening. The translator broadcast Do-yu's words so they could all hear. His voice trembled. You actually came. Yes. No one has ever answered a distress call before. Not for another species. It is not done. In the entire history of the galaxy, no one has ever come for someone who was not their own. Do-yu looked at the old man, and then at the crowd behind him. He saw the faces of children clinging to their parents. He saw people with bandaged wounds and hollow eyes. He saw a civilization that had been brought to its knees, and told by the universe that it did not matter. Where we come from, Do-yu said quietly. That is exactly when you are supposed to show up. Tivan broke. The old man lowered his head and wept, not in sadness, but in a kind of overwhelming relief that went beyond words. Rivi held his arm, and cried with him. Behind them, the crowd of Omari began to weep as well, hundreds of voices rising in a sound that was part grief, part gratitude, and part something entirely new. Nari stepped forward and began directing the medical teams. She moved through the crowd with calm efficiency, pointing medics toward the most seriously injured, organizing supply distribution, setting up shelter areas. She did not make speeches. She did not need to. Her actions said everything. Genu coordinated with the engineers from the fleet. They began clearing debris, restoring power to damaged infrastructure, and setting up water purification units. He worked alongside Omari volunteers who had started helping despite their own injuries. No one needed to explain what to do. The work was obvious. Rebuild, restore, survive. Soyan brought down heavy equipment from the fleet and started repairing the most critical systems on the planet. Power grids, communication networks, water systems. She worked for 16 hours straight, without stopping, fueled by nothing but determination and a seemingly endless supply of energy bars from the ship's stores. Over the next several days, the human fleet stayed in orbit around Revon Prime. Thousands of crew members rotated down to the surface, in shifts, working alongside the Omari to begin putting their world back together. It was hard, slow, exhausting work, but no one complained. No one asked to stop. Doyu walked through the rebuilding city on the third day. He passed a group of human engineers teaching Omari workers how to reinforce a damaged building. He passed a medic treating an Omari child's broken arm while the child stared at the human's face with wide, fascinated eyes. He passed Unji sitting on a pile of rubble with 3 Omari teenagers, teaching them basic human words while they taught her theirs. They were laughing. He stopped and watched them for a moment. This is what it was supposed to be about. Not the fighting, not the missiles and the explosions. This. On the 4th day, Tivon came to Doyu one last time. The elder looked different now. He stood straighter. His eyes were brighter. He was still tired and still hurt, but the despair was gone. Captain Han, Tivon said through the translator, I need you to know something. What you did here will not stay on Revon. The other species of the galaxy are watching. They have always watched. They watched when the Drokai came, and they did nothing. Now they are watching you, and they do not understand. What do they not understand? Doyu asked. Why you came. You had nothing to gain. We have no resources to offer you. No military alliance. No technology. We are farmers. We had nothing that could benefit you. And yet you came. You fought for us. You bled for us. Every species in the galaxy is asking the same question right now. What question? What kind of species does that? Doyu thought about it for a long moment. Then he said something that Tivon would remember for the rest of his life, and that would be repeated across 1,000 worlds for centuries to come. The kind that remembers what it felt like to be alone. Tivon placed his hand on Doyu's shoulder. It was a gesture that meant trust in Omari culture. Doyu did not know that yet. He did not need to. He understood. A week later, the Iron Wake and the 7th Battle Fleet prepared to leave. The Omari gathered in the rebuilt square to watch them go. Thousands of them stood in silence as the human shuttles lifted off and climbed toward the sky. Doyu stood on the bridge and watched Revon Prime grow smaller in the viewport. He knew what was waiting for him back on Earth. There would be hearings. There would be investigations. Admirals and politicians would question his decision and demand answers. He might be court-martialed. He might lose everything. He looked at the planet one last time, and he felt no regret. Not a single grain of it. Nari stepped up beside him. Earth Command has sent 14 messages demanding our immediate return. I know. They are not happy. I know. She paused. Are you worried? Doyu looked at her. No. Why not? He smiled. It was small and tired, but real. Because when they listen to that distress call, and then look at what we did, They will understand. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And if they do not, then I will sleep well anyway. Nari nodded. She almost smiled. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, and Ravon Prime disappeared behind them. But the story did not end there. Across the galaxy, in council chambers and royal courts and dark trading posts, every species heard what had happened. A young, primitive species from a small planet called Earth had answered a stranger's cry for help, fought a battle against impossible odds, and asked for nothing in return. For the first time in galactic history, the galaxy had a word for what humans were. They called them the ones who come. And every species, from the mightiest empire to the smallest colony, quietly made a note to themselves: never, under any circumstances, give humanity a reason to come for you. The Drokai did not understand what was happening. For as long as their kind had existed, they had taken what they wanted from the weak. They moved from system to system, fleet to fleet, world to world, and no one stopped them. No one ever stopped them. The galaxy was built on one simple rule: the strong take and the weak suffer. It had always been this way. Every species knew it. Every species accepted it. So when 42 alien warships dropped out of nowhere and began ripping their fleet apart, the Drokai did not react with strategy or discipline. They reacted with confusion. For the first time in their long and violent history, someone had come to fight them, and they had no idea what to do. Commander Nari led the vanguard straight into the heart of the Drokai formation. Her ship, the Black Tide, was a fast attack cruiser built for one purpose: to get close and hit hard. She drove it forward like a spear, and the 11 ships behind her followed without hesitation. "Target the command ship," Nari ordered. "The big one in the center, with the red markings. Take it out, and the rest will lose coordination." Her weapons officer, a young man named Ko Minho, locked onto the target and fired. A full spread of kinetic missiles launched from the Black Tide and crossed the distance in seconds. They struck the Drokai command ship along its midsection, punching through the hull like fists through wet paper. The Drokai had energy shields. Every advanced species in the galaxy used them. Their technology was designed to absorb and deflect energy-based weapons: lasers, plasma bolts, particle beams. That was how galactic warfare worked. That was how it had worked for thousands of years. But humans did not use energy weapons. Earth's battle fleet fired kinetic rounds, solid slugs of dense metal, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. Missiles packed with explosive warheads. Torpedoes designed to pierce armor and detonate inside a ship's core. These were not elegant weapons. They were not sophisticated. By galactic standards, they were primitive. They were also devastating. The Drokai shields flickered and failed under the barrage. Their technology had never been designed to stop physical impacts at these velocities. The slugs tore through energy barriers like they were not there. The missiles did not bounce off or dissipate. They hit and they exploded, blowing holes in hulls and shattering entire decks. The Drokai command ship broke apart in a shower of fire and debris. The explosion sent a shockwave rippling through the nearby ships, damaging 3 more and knocking 2 of them out of formation. On the bridge of the Iron Wake, Doyu watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. The fleet was performing exactly as he had hoped. Nari's vanguard had split the enemy formation in 2, and now the main battle line was pouring fire into both halves. "Jinnu, status," Doyu said. Jinnu's eyes were locked on his screen. 18 enemy ships destroyed in the first 3 minutes. Another 12 are heavily damaged and drifting. The rest are trying to regroup, but they cannot form a line. Our ships are too fast. Casualties on our side? 2 ships have taken minor damage, no losses. Their weapons are barely scratching our armor. Doyu allowed himself a small breath of relief, but he knew better than to relax. 200 ships was still a lot, even if the enemy was confused and outgunned. Across the battlefield, the Drokai finally began to fight back. Their captains screamed orders at each other over open channels. They turned their ships and began firing their energy weapons at the human fleet. Bright beams of blue and green light lanced across space and struck the hulls of Earth's warships. The beams hit. They scorched the armor. They left black marks on the metal. But they did not penetrate. Earth's ships were built with layers of dense composite plating, designed to take physical punishment. The energy weapons heated the surface, but could not cut through. Mino laughed from his station aboard the Black Tide. "They are tickling us." Nari did not laugh. She kept her eyes on the fight. "Do not get comfortable. Focus on the carriers. Every carrier we destroy is 1,000 fewer raiders on the surface." She was right. The real battle was not just in orbit. Down on Revan Prime, Drokai landing parties were still on the ground, rounding up Omari civilians and loading them onto transport ships. Every minute the battle continued was another minute those people suffered. Doyu saw the same thing. He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships. Prioritize the carrier-class vessels and the landing transports. I want every transport grounded or destroyed. Nothing leaves this planet." The fleet shifted its fire. Heavy battleships turned their main guns on the Drokai carriers and unleashed everything they had. Kinetic rounds the size of cars slammed into the massive ships at thousands of meters per second. The carriers were big and tough, but they were not built for this kind of punishment. One by one, they began to break. The first carrier split down the middle, its fuel reserves igniting in a chain reaction that turned the entire ship into a fireball. The second lost its engines and began to drift, spinning slowly as escape pods launched from its sides. The third tried to turn and run, but Nari's vanguard cut it off and tore it apart with concentrated fire. Down on the surface, the Drokai ground forces looked up at the sky and saw their fleet dying. Fire rained down from orbit as ship after ship was destroyed. Debris streaked through the atmosphere like burning meteors. The raiders who had been so confident, so certain of their power, began to panic. Some tried to reach their landing craft. Others dropped their weapons and ran. Chief Engineer Park Soyun called up from the engine room. "Captain, I am reading multiple energy spikes from the remaining enemy ships. I think they are trying to charge their jump drives." "They are running," Nari said over the fleet channel. There was no satisfaction in her voice, just cold determination. "Do not let them," Doyu replied. "If they jump away, they will do this again to someone else. Every ship that can be stopped must be stopped." The fleet closed in. The remaining Drokai ships tried to scatter in every direction, abandoning their formation, abandoning their ground troops, abandoning everything. They just wanted to escape. The fast attack group chased down the runners. The battleships blocked the escape routes. Missiles streaked across the void, finding their targets with terrible accuracy. The battle lasted 11 minutes from the first shot to the last. When it was over, the space around Revan Prime was filled with wreckage. Broken Drokai ships drifted in silence, their hulls shattered and dark. A few dozen had managed to jump away, fleeing into hyperspace with whatever was left of their crews. The rest were gone. 42 human ships floated among the ruins of a fleet 5 times their size. Some had scorch marks on their armor. A few had dents where debris had struck them. One ship had lost a sensor array, but not a single Earth vessel had been destroyed. Not one. Doyu stood on the bridge and looked at the wreckage. The tactical display showed green markers for every ship in his fleet. All 42 were still there. Nari's voice came over the channel. "Captain, the enemy fleet is broken. The battle is over." Doyu nodded slowly. He looked down at the planet below. The fires were still burning. The smoke still covered the sky. The damage was enormous, but the Drokai ships in orbit were gone. The landing transports were destroyed. The siege was over. Not yet, Doyu said softly. The battle in space is over, but we still have people to save down there. He turned to Jinnu. Prepare the ground teams. Medical, engineering, and security. We are going to the surface. Jinnu nodded. Yes, sir. Somewhere deep in the wreckage of the Drokai fleet, a faint emergency signal blinked in the dark. It was a Drokai distress call, broadcasting to any ship that might hear it. Ravon Prime was burning. From the bridge of the Iron Wake, Captain Han Doyu could see the planet hanging in the black, and it looked like a wound. Great scars of orange fire stretched across the surface where cities had once stood. Columns of thick smoke rose from the land and curled into the atmosphere, turning the sky from blue to a sick, dirty gray. Even from orbit, the destruction was clear. Someone had been tearing this world apart. And above the planet, circling it like vultures over a dying animal, was the enemy fleet. Jinnu counted them on his screen. Over 200 ships, sir. Mixed sizes. The largest ones are carrier class. They have landing craft going back and forth between the ships and the surface. Landing craft, Nari repeated, and her voice was cold. They are not just bombing, they are taking people. The bridge was silent. Every officer stared at the screen. They could see the enemy ships moving in slow, lazy patterns around the planet. There was no urgency in their movements, no caution. They moved like they owned the sky, like there was nothing in the universe that could stop them. Doyu studied the enemy formation. The ships were large, covered in dark metal, with sharp angles and glowing red lines along their hulls. He did not recognize the design. No one on the bridge did. Whoever these raiders were, Earth had never encountered them before. Any identification? Doyu asked. Unji shook her head. No matches in our database, sir, but I am picking up communications between their ships. The language is similar to a dialect used by a species called the Drokai. They are listed in the old catalogs as a nomadic raider species. No homeworld, no government. They move from system to system and take what they want. And nobody stops them? Jinnu asked. Nobody has tried, Yunji said quietly. Doyu let that sink in. 200 ships against a planet full of farmers who had never fought a war. The Drokai had chosen their target well. The Omari had no fleet, no weapons, no way to fight back. They had done the only thing they could do. They had sent a signal into the dark and begged someone to come. And for 3 days, nobody had. Nari pulled up the tactical display and studied the enemy positions. They have no defensive formation, no patrol ships watching the outer system. They are not expecting anyone to come. Why would they? Jinnu said. Nobody ever does. Doyu stood up from his chair. He walked to the front of the bridge and looked at the planet through the main viewport. Down there, millions of people were dying. Families were being torn apart. Lives were being destroyed. And the rest of the galaxy was watching and doing nothing. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His daughter, who was 12 years old and liked to draw pictures of starships. His wife, who always told him to be careful before every deployment. He wondered what he would want someone to do if it were his world burning, if it were his daughter down there. He already knew the answer. Open a channel to the fleet, he said. Unji opened the line. Doyu's voice went out to every ship. All captains, this is Han Doyu. You can see what I see. Over 200 enemy ships, a planet under siege, people being taken from their homes. I will not give you a long speech. You already know why we are here. Form battle lines, weapons free on my command. We hit them hard and we hit them fast. Today these people find out they are not alone. He closed the channel and turned to Nari. Commander, you have the vanguard. Take the fast attack group and punch through their center. I want their formation broken in the first 60 seconds. Nari nodded sharply. With pleasure, sir. Jinnu, target their carrier-class ships first. If we take out the big ones, the smaller ships will scatter. Already locked, Captain. Soyun, Doyu called to the engine room. Give me everything the ship has. Soyun's voice crackled through the speaker. You will have it, Captain. Every last bit of it. The fleet moved. 42 human warships spread into an attack formation like a blade being drawn. The fast attack group, 12 ships led by Nari, aboard the cruiser Black Tide, surged ahead. The heavy battleships formed the core line. The support ships fell in behind, ready to provide cover fire and coordinate targeting. On the surface of Ravan Prime, in a ruined city buried under smoke and ash, an Omari elder named Tivon sat in the remains of what had been a school. Around him, hundreds of his people huddled together in the dark. Children cried. The injured groaned. The air smelled like burning metal and fear. Tivon had been the one who sent the distress signal 3 days ago. He had used the last working transmitter on the planet, and aimed it at every corner of the galaxy he could reach. Nobody had answered. He had stopped hoping on the second day. By the third day, he had accepted that the galaxy was what it had always been. Cold, indifferent. Every species looked after its own, and nothing more. That was the way of things. He had been foolish to think anyone would come. A young Omari woman named Rivi knelt beside him. She had been a teacher at this school before the attack. Now she was trying to keep the children calm, while the world burned around them. The signal, she whispered. Is there any response? Tivon shook his head slowly. No, there will be no response. We are alone. She held a small child against her chest and said nothing. Above them, through the broken ceiling of the school, the sky was gray with smoke. Drokai ships drifted overhead, searchlights cutting through the haze as they looked for more survivors to take. Then, something changed. Tivon felt it before he saw it. A vibration, deep and low, moving through the ground and into his bones. The dust on the floor trembled. The broken glass in the windows rattled. He looked up at the sky. Through the smoke, he saw light. Not the red light of the Drokai ships, something different. Bright white streaks cutting across the sky like falling stars. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The streaks moved with terrifying speed, slamming into the Drokai ships in orbit. Explosions bloomed in the upper atmosphere, one after another, lighting up the gray sky like a second sunrise. Rivi grabbed his arm. What is happening? Tivon stared upward, his old heart pounding. He did not understand. In all the history of the galaxy, no one had ever answered a distress call from a species that was not their own. It was simply not done. Every civilization knew this. You survived on your own, or you did not survive at all. But someone had come. High above the planet, the 7th Battle Fleet of Earth slammed into the Drokai Armada like a hammer hitting glass. The first volley of missiles tore through space and struck the nearest carrier-class ship dead center. The explosion was enormous, a ball of fire and shattered metal that expanded outward and consumed 2 smaller ships beside it. The Drokai had no time to react. They had not posted guards. They had not raised shields. They had been so certain that no one would come that they had left themselves completely open. And now, 42 ships full of angry humans were pouring fire into them from every direction. Nari's voice rang across the fleet channel, sharp and clear. All ships, push forward. Do not give them time to regroup. Keep firing. The battle for Ravan had begun. The hyperspace tunnel roared around the Iron Wake like a river of blue fire. The walls of the corridor shimmered and pulsed as the ship tore through the fabric of space at speeds that would have been considered impossible just a century ago. Inside the ship, The crew felt nothing. The stabilizers kept everything smooth and still. But everyone knew they were moving faster than light itself, heading toward a place no human had ever been. Captain Han Do-yu had not slept since the signal came in. He stood in the war room behind the bridge, with Commander Yoon Nari and Lieutenant Bae Jinu, staring at a holographic map of the Revan system. The data was old and incomplete. Earth had no scouts in that region, no satellites, no intelligence of any kind. Everything they knew came from outdated alien star catalogs that had been traded to Earth decades ago. "This is what we have," Jinu said, pointing at the map. "Revan is a single star system with 6 planets. The 4th planet is the one that matters. It is called Revan Prime. Atmosphere is breathable. Population is estimated at around 900 million. "What species?" Nari asked. "They call themselves the Omari. Peaceful civilization. Agricultural. They have some space travel, but nothing military. No warships, no orbital defenses. According to these old records, they have never been in a war." Nari looked at Do-yu. "That explains the distress call. They cannot defend themselves." Do-yu nodded. "What about the attackers? Do we know who they are?" Jinu shook his head. The signal did not say, but based on the patterns in the call, the Omari have been under siege for at least 3 days. Whoever is hitting them, they are not in a hurry. They are taking their time. That word sat heavy in the room. Taking their time. It meant the attackers were not just destroying, they were harvesting. Picking the planet apart piece by piece, while the Omari screamed for help into a galaxy that did not care. Do-yu turned away from the map and walked to the observation window. Outside, the tunnel of hyperspace swirled and twisted like a living thing. He thought about what he had done. He had disobeyed a direct order from Earth Command. He had turned 42 warships toward a fight they knew nothing about. If this went wrong, he would lose his career. He might lose his freedom. And worse, he might lose his crew. But he could not turn back. Not after hearing that voice. The door to the war room opened, and a woman walked in. She was Chief Engineer Park So-yoon, a short and stocky woman with grease on her hands and fire in her eyes. She had been down in the engine room since the fleet jumped, and she looked like she had not sat down once. "Engines are holding," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "But I will not lie to you, Captain. We are pushing them harder than they were built for. I can give you 12 more hours at this speed. After that, I cannot promise anything." "We only need 10, Jinu said. So-yoon looked at him. "Then we will be fine, probably." Nari almost smiled. She had known So-yoon for years. The engineer always said probably, when she meant definitely. It was her way. The hours passed slowly. The fleet moved through hyperspace in tight formation. 42 ships cutting through the void like a fist. They were not the largest fleet in Earth's Navy. They were not the newest, but they were battle-tested. Every ship in the 7th Fleet had seen combat before. Every crew member had trained for years. They knew what they were doing. Do-yu used the time to prepare. He called a fleet-wide briefing over the communication system. Every captain, every officer, every crew member on all 42 ships listened as he spoke. "I will not lie to you," he said, his voice steady and clear. "We are heading into a situation we do not fully understand. We do not know who the enemy is. We do not know how many ships they have. We do not know what weapons they carry. What we do know is this. Someone sent a distress call. They asked for help. And no one in the entire galaxy answered. No one except us." He paused and let the silence fill every ship. "Earth Command ordered us to ignore the call. They told us it was not our problem. And maybe they are right. Maybe it is not our problem. But I became a soldier to protect people. Not just our people, all people. If we fly past someone who is screaming for help just because they do not look like us or speak like us, then what are we? What is the point of having these ships and these weapons if we only use them when it is convenient?" Across the fleet, crew members listened in silence. Some stood at their stations, some sat in their bunks, some stood in engine rooms and weapons bays with tools still in their hands. Every one of them heard the conviction in their captain's voice. When we drop out of hyperspace, we will be ready for a fight. I do not know what we will find, but I know what we will do. We will answer that call, and we will make sure that whoever is hurting those people understands one simple thing. They picked the wrong galaxy to do it in. The fleet responded, not with cheers or speeches, with action. Weapons officers loaded every missile tube. Gunners checked their targeting systems. Pilots ran final checks on their fighter craft. Medical teams prepared their bays for casualties. Engineers tightened every bolt and sealed every panel. Nari walked through the iron wake and watched the crew work. She saw determination in their faces. Not anger, not fear, just a quiet, steady resolve that said, we are going to do this, and we are going to do it right. She felt proud of them. She felt proud of Doyu for making the call. Jinnu updated the fleet with its final calculations. They would drop out of hyperspace on the far side of Revon's star, using the star's gravity to mask their approach. It would give them a few extra minutes before the enemy detected them. A few minutes was all they needed. In the final hour before arrival, Doyu returned to the bridge and sat in his command chair. The crew was at their stations. The ship was ready. The fleet was ready. Soyun called up from the engine room. Captain, drives are green. We are ready to drop on your order. Jinnu confirmed the coordinates. Exit point locked. We will be in weapons range within 4 minutes of arrival. Nari took her place beside Doyu and looked at him. Any second thoughts? Doyu shook his head. Not one. She nodded. Good. The countdown began. 10 seconds. The bridge crew gripped their consoles. 5 seconds. The hum of the engines shifted in pitch. 3, 2, 1. The Iron Wake and 41 warships behind it ripped out of hyperspace and into the Revon system like a storm breaking through a wall. And what they saw on the other side made every person on every ship go silent. The signal came at 0347 ship time, when most of the crew aboard the Iron Wake was asleep. It started as a whisper, a broken, repeating pulse, buried deep inside the background noise of space. The communication officer on duty that night was a young woman named Shin Enji. She had been sitting at her station for 6 hours with nothing to do. The deep patrol routes were always quiet. Nothing ever happened out here. That was the whole point. Earth's military liked to keep its battle fleets moving along the edges of known space, watching and waiting for something that never came. But tonight, something came. Enji noticed the pulse first, as a small irregularity on her screen. She almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the rhythm of it caught her attention. It was not random. It was not natural. She leaned forward in her chair and began to isolate the frequency. It took her nearly 20 minutes to clean the signal enough to hear it clearly. When she finally did, her hands went still on the console. It was a voice, not human. The language was unknown, full of sounds that no human throat could make. But the tone needed no translation. It was fear. It was pain. It was a cry for help. Unji immediately flagged the signal and sent it to the bridge. Within minutes, the lights in the corridors of the Iron Wake flickered on, and the ship began to wake. Officers moved quickly through the narrow hallways. Crew members pulled on their uniforms and reported to their stations. Word spread fast. Something had been found. Captain Han Doyu arrived on the bridge 7 minutes after the alert. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with a calm face and steady eyes. He had served in the fleet for over 20 years and had commanded the Iron Wake for the last 5. He was not the kind of man who rushed. He walked onto the bridge, took his seat, and looked at the main screen without saying a word. Unji played the signal for him. The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and listened. The alien voice filled the room, broken and desperate, repeating the same message again and again. No one understood the words, but everyone understood the meaning. Someone out there was dying and asking for help. Doyu listened to the full loop 3 times. Then he turned to his navigation officer, Lieutenant Bei Jinu. Jinu was already working, his fingers moving fast across his console. He was a sharp man, thin and focused, the kind of person who solved problems before anyone finished asking the question. "Where is it coming from?" Doyu asked. Jinu pointed to a region on the star map, far beyond the borders of any space that humans had ever explored. "It is from a system called Revon, sir. At least, that is what the star catalogs call it. We have no records of contact with anyone from that area. No trade routes, no diplomatic channels, nothing. How far? 14 hours through hyperspace. Maybe less if we push the drives." Doyu stared at the map. Revon was deep in what the fleet called the Quiet Zone, a vast stretch of galaxy where hundreds of alien civilizations lived, but none of them had ever spoken to Earth. Humanity was still young in the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. Most alien species saw them as primitives, loud, aggressive, and not worth talking to. Commander Yoon Nari stepped up beside Doyu. She was his second-in-command, a woman with short dark hair and a voice that could cut through any noise on the bridge. She had read the signal data on her tablet while walking in, and already understood the situation. "It is a distress call," she said. "A real one. Whatever is happening over there, it has been going on for a while. The signal is degrading. Whoever sent it might not last much longer." Doyu nodded slowly. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command. The response came within minutes, routed through a relay station 2 systems away. The officer on the other end was a rear admiral named Go Taesun, a man who liked rules and hated surprises. "Captain Han, I have reviewed the signal," Taesun said. His voice was flat and official. "This is not our concern. The source is outside of our patrol zone and involves a species we have no agreement with. You are ordered to log the signal and continue your current route." Doyu said nothing for a moment. "Sir," he replied, "the signal is a distress call. Someone is asking for help." "I understand what it is, Captain, and I am telling you that it is not our mission. We do not know what is out there. We do not know who sent it, and we do not have authorization to enter the Quiet Zone." "Understood, sir." Doyu sat in his chair and stared at the star map for a long time. The bridge crew watched him quietly. No one spoke. They all knew what the order meant. They were supposed to turn away and keep flying. Someone was screaming into the dark, and they were supposed to pretend they did not hear it. Nari stood beside him with her arms crossed. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Doyu could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on the bridge looking at him. He could still hear the alien voice echoing in his mind. He made his decision. "Unji," he said quietly. "Yes, sir." "Send a message to every ship in the 7th Fleet. Emergency priority. Tell them to form up on our position." Unji blinked. "Sir," Command said. "I know what Command said." Doyu stood up and straightened his uniform. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. "Someone out there is asking for help. We are going to answer." A small, hard smile crossed her face. She turned to the bridge crew and raised her voice. "You heard the captain. Battle stations. Plot a course for Revon. We move in 1 hour." The bridge exploded into action. Jinu began calculating the hyperspace route. Unji sent the fleet-wide message. Officers shouted orders into their communicators. Deep in the belly of the Iron Wake, the engines began to hum louder as the ship prepared for a jump it was never supposed to make. 42 ships of the 7th Battle Fleet received the message. Not one of them questioned it. Not one of them hesitated. Within the hour, they had all changed course and were falling into formation behind the Iron Wake. Captain Han Do-yu stood on the bridge and watched the stars stretch into lines as the fleet entered hyperspace. Behind him, the safe and familiar patrol route grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Ahead of them was the unknown, and somewhere in that unknown, someone was waiting for help that the rest of the galaxy had refused to give.